For those of you who didn't hear, Aswat means voices in Arabic, and they're all people who love Arabic music and want to preserve the culture and traditions. And it was actually founded by Nabila Mango, who isn't here today, but is a really important leader in the community, and we just want to bring her into this space. So I want to just welcome everyone. I'm Cindy Chen. I'm the director of the philanthropic advocacy work, a proud staff member of AAPIP. Wow. And I wanted to say a little bit about this space. We're in the heart of the Yerba Buena district, and it's one of the centers of culture and arts here. We have like 11 world-class museums. It's just a really wonderful area. And this building itself is from San Francisco Urban Planning and Research Association, and they're almost 100 years old. And they're really dedicated to good planning, good government, and really creating a space for people to come together and to talk about the future. And that's what we're here to talk about today, our priorities and what we can do in these times. I wanted to also say this is a premier green building. So just take that in. This is a wonderful space, and we encourage you to use it. Spur's been really wonderful to work with. And I want to invite Randy to come up and join me.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Randy Chun. I am the board chair for AAPIP, and I had the great pleasure of welcoming you again. Thank you for coming. I know a lot of you flew in from the East Coast and other faraway places, so we really appreciate you coming on in here. I came in from San Mateo, so it wasn't that and, I came in and I wasn't dressed like this. I had a polo shirt and some slacks on, and they were fixing the screen up there, and they thought I was the techie. So I had to get into my coat and tie. I'm the suit from Wells Fargo. So it's really amazing and very inspirational to see all of you here, having the opportunity to network with you and meet some old friends and say hello to new acquaintances. But I do have the distinct pleasure today of introducing the Honorable Mayor Edwin Lee. He's going to do some opening remarks to us today. And so you don't want to hear from me. You do want to hear from the Mayor, Edwin Lee. Mayor? Oh. I'm sorry. They threw the script in front of me, and but before the mayor comes on, we'll be giving him an idea of who's in the room today.
Okay.
Cindy?
Thank you, Randy. Okay.
And I love you too, Cindy.
Okay, so as Randy said, I think it would be really important for us to get a sense of who's in the room. And I really wish everyone could get up, introduce themselves, say where they came from, what they're doing, what inspires you. But of course, we don't have time for that. So if you will, indulge us in this exercise. It is Saturday morning. We need a little exercise this morning. And what I wanted to do is just, if this question applies to you, because we have so many people here who represents the different parts of AAPIP's network, to please stand and keep standing. And if you want to clap and get excited, do little jumping jacks, please do. So again, if I call out who you represent, please just stand and join us. So if you are a civic engagement community partner who's worked also with the Queer Justice Fund, if you're one of the VIA Fellows, can you please stand? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Okay. Okay, Randy? Keep standing.
And that's 1 point for Cindy. APIP members, chapter leaders, and board members. Oh, there we go.
Keep standing. Everyone keep standing. Okay. If you are a community leader from one of the organizational fellowship programs, please stand.
If you're a giving circle leader or someone attempting to organize a giving circle, please stand.
If you are a community leader of an organization seeking to create change in your community, please stand.
And if you believe that we have the power to create change in the community, please stand.
Please stand. Okay, everybody should be standing. Okay, and just to keep the fun going, I want you to open your program, and I want you to turn to your wonderful Southwest ad in your program, which is in the back cover. And if you have a star in the middle of the hand of the airplane, to please stand. Please stand. Kim would like to announce.
Come on down, because you are the lucky winner of 2 round-trip tickets on Southwest Airlines and your own personal jet.
Right this way, Kim, right here. One more.
Okay. So I have to just say, I know this is so exciting. This is why you come to APIP events, right? So Kim Delavitte is our wonderful Southwest representative. She's been so supportive of APIP overall, and in particular our Viet Fellows program. She is a Vietnamese American herself who has this incredible story, and she's just someone who has really been such a great support and so much fun. And Sophia, our very own Sophia, is an incredible organizer in the Long Beach community for Khmer Girls in Action. And if you don't know who Khmer Girls in Action is, Google it, because they're an important organization and a force to reckon with. So congratulations. Okay. So now. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
And I brought lunch. So, in the back, peanuts on me.
I just introduced if I forget the little thing.
You need to introduce me.
Okay. Mary Lee has made history, as all of you know, by standing up after I made the mistake. He's become the first San Francisco Asian American mayor. I'm looking at this script today, and I forgot my glasses. So we invited the mayor today because of really his exemplary leadership in the Asian community and prioritizing all communities in the city and county of San Francisco. He recently joined other mayors to call for more investments in our cities and for putting more people back to work. Please join me in welcoming the Mayor of San Francisco, Edwin Lee. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Well, I would love to stay this whole day. It sounds like it's going to be lots of fun, and it's certainly better than going to some mayoral debate. But I did want to briefly come by and say welcome, but also say thank you, because I see all of you, and I've known many of you for years. In fact, I'm afraid to say a lot of old friends, because that word old, everybody's looking pretty preserved, much better than I look. But I wanted to join Peggy and Kent and Eugene Cho and all of you, just welcoming you here from all across the country. Being here in San Francisco is a pretty exciting time, not just for me. It's exciting for the city and for our communities. And there's so much hope that we could see because we've had many, many years of struggle. And I know those years. I know them right here in San Francisco. And as we struggle to get in our community some respect and to kind of really force equality through many, many different channels. As my years at the Asian Law Caucus, we did some great work. But there's so much more to do on behalf of our communities. And you're right here working on this very important part of democracy in our philanthropic arena, capacity building in our communities. These are themes that I learned very, very early working at the caucus. And when we worked with those tenants at the Pingyuan public housing projects, little did I know at that time that 30 years later, those very same themes resonate so deeply in the way we think, the way we conduct ourselves in government, and again, the way we need to reach out to every single community so that they are part of what we do in the city. And I've been about that. I've been proud to be about that. And I've been reminding every department head and every commissioner and every business here that you're not here just to be for yourselves. You're actually here to serve our public and to understand more deeply what it is beyond the facades. And I always talk about that because that was something that we did at the caucus so well. We started out talking that it's a great place to be in Chinatown and working there, but you've got to see beyond the facades. You've got to know who's living in the alleyways, who's working in our restaurants, who's working in those low-income housing units that oftentimes are housing whole families. And we only find that out when occasionally there's a fire that occurs in our Chinatown and we have so many families displaced. And where do we go to do something about them? How do we work with our communities to understand what is beyond those facades? That's why this week has been particularly very exciting. Yesterday we signed the improvements to our wage theft ordinance, and some of you are here today. I'm very proud of that ordinance. Because it wasn't, again, it wasn't something that government was doing by itself. It was something that really came from the grassroots, from CPA and from La Raza and from Workers Alliance and Unite Workers here, people working with bilingual communities and talking to the restaurant workers and the bakery workers and the hotel workers and finding out what it is that we need to make sure they become more equal in our very unequal society. The lowest paid workers here in the city continue to struggle with their families. And they are, in the most part, women-led families, immigrant families. And so again, it was another affirmation of why APEC and the ministerial meetings had to be here in San Francisco, and that it was such a fortunate thing for Secretary Clinton to really portray and announce her commitment as the Secretary of State to suggest to not only our Bay Area, but to countries around the world, and particularly member nations of the APEC nations, that as they think about their economies, and we think about our economies, to understand that the role of women is not just about their equity, but the contribution to the GDP of every single nation. That if we don't unleash the power of everybody in our communities, how can we ever be successful companies on an economic basis? And that while we've done some things well here, we still have a long ways to go. So I was very inspired with that speech. I was thinking through all the things that I've ever done and making sure that women were part of our cabinet as well, but also the economic unleashing. And when you hear the stories about just the women-owned businesses that we have in the city and how they struggled, and when they tell you that they would have rather open up their bakery here in the Mission than have opened up a business in Mexico because of the level of corruption, because of the disrespect that women are facing, because they can't get loans, that they have to be second-class citizens in many part of our countries. Those barriers continue to prevent us from being successful in the world. And whether it's Mexico or whether it's Southeast Asia or in China or some of the other countries, it was an important message to deliver. And I think it's providing us a lot more unity here. I want to say basically three things as you begin this day of deliberation. I'm very happy to be here at Spur. Spur is helping us make sure that the Central Subway is being built. They are part of a grassroots organization that's been here for a long time, but they also are concerned all the time about our infrastructure, because without the Central Subway, the communities that are evolving, whether it's Chinatown or Hunters Point or Visitation Valley, won't be connected. And our new housing and our places where we're building housing won't be connected. And that's a very vital infrastructure. So they're helping us do that. They understand in their role as urban researchers why our communities were so isolated and how that contributed to continued decades of inequality and non-participation. Three things. Last night I went by the plate by plate, project by project group, young Asian professionals who have taken on this theme as they are evolving their careers. They also begin to understand their responsibilities as individual professionals in the city. And I was excited to see so many young professionals come together and take on the theme of education. There are constant themes that we've always felt very comfortable with, and one of them is education, the other is health. And they combined good food and a theme of education to form their philanthropic goals and contributions as they evolve their professional businesses and their jobs. And I was buoyed by that. There's so many good things going on. In our city, there's a lot of opportunity going on, and I'm trying to make sure we do that from the city center. So you heard about my efforts to work with Supervisor Kim and Supervisor David Chu to make sure a company like Twitter stayed in the city, not just so that they can make their expected billions. We're not even talking millions of dollars, but their expected billions of dollars. But we're also working very hard to evolve a community benefits agreement so that as they establish their worldwide global headquarters and they talk about their global strategy to link up the different countries using their social media, we also want them to also be responsible citizens in this city. And so we've evolved and started a conversation, and I told Peggy this and she got very excited. We're starting a conversation with the companies like Twitter and Salesforce and Zynga as they hopefully become the new generation of corporate billionaires, that they also become the new generation of corporate philanthropists, that they establish foundations that are similar to the Corettes and to the Levi's and to the wonderful foundations that we have had a chance to work with over many, many years, who were community-minded and started on a very, very good course to work with companies or social service agencies throughout the city. And so in helping them establish their headquarters here, I want you to know that we're also talking with them to build not only the great workforces here and to offer jobs, and that's so important for the city and for every city, but also work with them on their philanthropic goals to make sure that they can establish foundations like what Mark Benioff has already done. You know, in Salesforce, he's become, as cloud computing and Salesforce become one of the leading cloud computing companies in the nation. Their headquarters are right here in San Francisco. And so he's already known as a third-generation San Franciscan that in order to be successful, in order to be important, be relevant to our society, he's got to have a foundation that exhibits that social responsibility. So it was natural for him to be the first to invest $100 million in the building of UC Medical Center. At the same time, another millions of dollars going into the Children's Hospital. Again, the themes of health resonate with many, many foundations. At the same time, there's opportunities to talk with him about what's behind the facades in our Asian communities, what's going on with our immigrant communities, and how wage earners here want to be equal members of our society. a lot of potential there as we talk to Twitter, because they're trying to figure out as they grow, and as they grow from their 300 to 3,000 employees in the next 2 years, how can their employees contribute, as I know they want to, because I met with them, and they want to and love the fact that there's diversity. That's part of their innovation, by the way. It wasn't just the CFO and the CEO. The workers themselves, the engineers, met with me in closed-door session, and I asked them, what is it that interests you in San Francisco? And they said diversity keeps them innovative, the language, the culture, and they want to contribute. They're not, I think, part of that old tech bubble that burst where people, CEOs were just spending money on their high lifestyles. They actually understand and appreciate the cultural diversity in the city and want to be part of it. So they want to be close to there. That's part of where their dynamics are. Same thing with Zynga. If you didn't know Zynga, what they did in the matter of 2 days, they raised over $2 million for the earthquake in Japan, just by one icon put into their worldwide network of social gaming. They have potential, and we have to be able to unleash that. So, and I want to say to you that the last example I want to give you is an example of things that are going on where it exhibits great hope and great potential is about a month ago, I was asked to participate in, as being the first Asian and Chinese mayor in the city, the Kwang Chao Benevolent Association on an annual basis for 20 years. They offer scholarships to members of the Chinese community for the kids to go to school. And in these times, with these scholarships are so important because of the tuition rise and the challenges that every youth is facing. It's not easy to even be a college student these days with so much economic pressure. And in particular, those that are first-time college entrants, their families are facing so much pressure for one kid to succeed. And so these scholarships become more and more important. So many family associations have these. They've always been dedicated to their best Chinese students, and they asked me to come and make a presentation to bless them as the first Asian mayor. They're very proud of that as well. And I said, okay, I'd be very willing to do that, but I kind of have my own values too that I want to share with you. And they said, well, what are those? I said, well, you know, I understand the theme of education in our Asian community is so important. We have dragon moms and dragon dads. And, education is driven so very hard, and the drive for excellence is there. But there's also other people of need that we need to recognize. As proud as I am to be the first Asian mayor, now there's an opportunity to do something very different. And so, well, what is that? So I would like to ask you, if for the first time in your history, that you can open up your scholarships to African Americans and to Latinos. Because they are also suffering. And, thank you. And, they responded by opening up those scholarships for the very first time in 25 years. And to have the Latino families there and the African-American families there as proud as a kid, and to join some of the highest achieving Asian kids in the same room sharing that scholarship is to me the epitome of our arrival in the city, because it isn't also about just the first Asian mayor. When we have this authority and power in us, then it's also about how to raise other communities to the same level and share that wealth and share that government change. So that was something. It was something that I learned very early, that I am so privileged to have the legal skills that I got from Berkeley to then work in the community, but then work alongside other communities that struggled so much. And so for this city to welcome in its first Asian mayor, and then for me to be able to take the opportunity to stand with all the other communities together and suggest that we can do things differently and not be so isolated among each other, and be able to lift other communities and help build their capacities. I'm going to continue doing that. That's what I love about the city. It's given me the great opportunity to do this, and I will continue doing my very best to represent the values that we have through our Asian community, on behalf of our Asian community, but on behalf of all of our city, to unite the city in levels that it's never seen before. And that's a privilege that I will get, and I will continue doing that. Thank you very much.
So the mayor apologizes for having to leave, but he's got a busy schedule today. Gosh, Ed, you're just a reminder of it's not what you look like, but it's really what you stand for. So thank you very much for being our mayor. Okay, so here we are. So I'm going to provide a little context for this plenary. About a year ago, we started planning for our annual leadership retreat, which is typically with our chapter leaders. And it's an opportunity, I think, to really bring our people together and share and learn and think about the future with our board and staff. And it typically happens around this time. The Community Foundations Conference is starting on Monday. And we really began to think about, well, actually, AAPIP's network of leaders has really grown. It is, of course, our chapter leaders and our chapters and all the worker bees who keep our chapters vibrant and relevant and connected to communities. But it's also the community groups that we've been working with. It's our allies in the philanthropic sector. It is our Giving Circle folks who are creatively bringing together their networks and thinking about how to resource our communities and the work that we really want to support that is not currently getting the investment that it deserves. And so thus this idea began about gathering people in a different way. And I think while if you look in your program, you could see the schedule. The community groups have been gathering, started yesterday. We started our leadership retreat yesterday. We're doing this. They will continue their meetings. Our giving circles will start their meetings today. And we thought, let's create this moment, this big tent moment where we can actually talk about critical issues in our communities. Right now, it's the social, cultural, political, and of course, the economic times that we're living in really requires us to stop, to think, and to really ask ourselves, what are we about? What are we trying to build? And what can we do together? So I think what we really also wanted to do is, this is one of the first times that we've actually brought our network together in this space, to be able to look at each other, see each other connect, and to begin to see each other as potential allies and supporters in this work. Because what's in this room today really represents what it's going to take, I think, to create change, and hopefully you'll agree. So I wanted to just say that one of the things we wanted to do with the program and who we have speaking in a little bit really represents what we're calling folks who are living and breathing democratic philanthropy. And you'll hear in a minute their story, their personal stories, but what they're also trying to build in terms of the broader picture. Finally, I think what we wanted to do was give us a sense of what it means to not only have a sense and purpose within your specific institution and in your specific community, but what it means to build something together and to be inclusive. A democracy requires us to think about who's not here and who are the people that we really need to connect with and make sure are part of the conversations. So here we are, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of AAPIP's board and staff for being here, because you really represent the leadership of our community. So thank you very much. So I get the pleasure of introducing our first speaker. And he's someone that I feel as though has really truly embraced the root meaning of philanthropy, which is the love of humanity. And in that definition, you know, what comes to mind is reciprocity, generosity, sustainability, empowerment. And it's really refreshing, you know, in the philanthropic jargon of, you know, logic models and impact assessments and what are the strategic long-term outcomes that we're looking for. Don't get me wrong, those are very, very important. But there's something refreshing about that simple notion of love for humanity. He's someone with his family who's managed to do something seemingly impossible. He's been able to turn grim statistics into an examination of one's own privilege and choices. Through the power of story and social media and technology, he's inspiring thousands of people in believing that you can change the world. He is living, breathing, building democratic philanthropy. Eugene Cho is the founder and executive director of One Day's Wages, and it's what he describes as a new movement of people, stories, and actions to alleviate extreme global poverty. We've invited Eugene here today because he's an example of someone who really deeply embraces the practice, and he's done it in a very innovative way. Please join me in welcoming Eugene Cho.
I was so compelled by Mayor Ed's presentation. It's really inspiring. I'm disappointed that he had to leave because I shaved my beard and left my mustache in his honor. So someone please tell him that I'm not joking. I'm so glad that I'm so glad that he's not bald. So, whenever I do these chats, I've got about 40, 45 minutes, and I hope that you would be willing to just kind of journey with me for a little bit. I travel often and speak at many, many places, and every single time I am nervous because I see it as such a great honor to share stories and time and space and journey together. So today, I think the reason why I was invited was not to try to impress you with logic per se or fancy words that you're all familiar with, but just to be as honest and genuine in sharing our story with you. Believing that somewhere there will be convergence and intersection and that we could be of mutual encouragement. But before I do that, what I'd like to do is maybe just kind of give you a couple of backdrop stories to kind of more further break the ice, if you will. I have, my wife and I, we've been married about 15 years, and we have 3 children. Our children obviously are very, very dear to us. Our children's names, if you get to know their names, will give you a glimpse of who we are. I happen to also be a pastor at a church in Seattle that my wife and I started 10 years ago. And so our kids, their names reflect our joy of culture and of Scripture. I'm a fan of Scripture. And so their names testify to both of those things. So for example, our oldest daughter's name is Jubilee. Jubilee is a character from X-Men, for some of you who are, right? Comic-Con, okay. Our daughter, second daughter, her name is Trinity. Trinity has a great reference in Scripture, and it's a Matrix character. She has yet to see the film, but I'm sure one of these days we'll see it together. And then lastly, my son's name is Jedi. Okay? Jedi. I'm a little worried about Jedi because he is the most popular kid in his school amongst boys. He does not know that it's not his personality. Okay? That these boys are enamored by his name. Okay? And so having said that, this is not a joke, I get emails from around the world, because I've spoken in a few places and so forth, where I get especially younger men, high school, college, young adults who email me saying, Mr. Cho, Reverend Cho, and on and on. How did you convince your wife to name your son Jedi? Teach me, O Yoda. So this is for my younger brothers here, my single brothers here. I want you to realize that in any relationship. It could be a board meeting, it could be a relationship, it could be a marriage, it could be whatever it might be. I want you to realize that one of the great gifts that we have as humanity, no matter what your worldviews may be, is this gift of freedom. So when you take away freedom, revolutions will take place. We see this globally, so think about this in a microcosm of a marriage. When your spouse feels that their back is against the wall, cornered in, revolutions will take place. So I went to my wife, my son is now 8 years old, so a little over 8 years ago, and I said, honey, her name is Min-hee. I go, Min-hee, I love you. And I don't know what it is. Some of you guys might watch Korean dramas. Like, whenever I speak to my wife, my voice gets lowered by 3 octaves. When I want something, I go, Min-hee, I love you. So I said, Min-hee, you are the mother of our children. You will be the one that will give birth to our son. And I only see that it will be fair and just that you choose the name of our son. Did you guys see what I just did? Brothers in the house. So I said, Min-hee, here's your choice. It's Jedi or Frodo. One of those two things. One of those two things. And my wife chose very wisely. So let me just share this with you. You know, when I was invited by Peggy and her team and leadership, the only thing I had to check was to see if I was free, because in reading through the vision of AAPIP, it so deeply resonated with my heart. And it's not just resonance. I thought they knew, but they did not know until I told them last night that this is my home. I'm from San Francisco. My parents live in the Mission District where I spent a good chunk of my life. We immigrated to this country in 1977, and we lived on Sutter Street. Initially on Pine. Yesterday I had a few hours, and it was actually kind of emotional. I actually was crying for a little bit because I walked the path that I walked every single day as a little kid. From school to the grocery store that our parents ran on Pine Street, on 1018 Pine Street. It's called Royal Pine Market. I went there hoping to buy some ice cream. It's now, unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not quite sure, I guess from your perspective, been replaced by a condo. I shot some videos there for my children, because I wanted them to know this is where your dad worked, starting at the age of 6. This is where we delivered groceries for a nickel. This is where I studied. And I tell my church, which happens to be a very diverse, multicultural church, that there is not a week that goes by, or sometimes even days that go by, where I'm reminded of my story as an immigrant. And the reason why I share this with you, no matter what your stories might be, is that I really do believe that as we look forward and as we are people that are certainly enjoying the moment and the present, we really can't forget where we come from. Because if you do, I really feel that our present and our future become skewed. In some way, it's like our hypocrisy when we become cynical or critical of that athlete, for example, who forgets the hood. And yet we don't examine ourselves and our story. So for us, all of us, where we come from other places, to not be mindful of the plight of immigrants today, I would say is just stupid. To not be mindful about our roots even prior to. So for me in the past, 10, 15 years, it's really been a rediscovering and a desire to communicate with my children again, that in their life of great privilege and entitlement, to also realize their bigger narrative story as well. I just turned 40, turning 41 next month, and so I'm kind of going through, and I still am, Peggy, I'm going through my midlife reflection. Midlife reflection sounds more wise than midlife crisis. But in doing that, I had a chance to go back to Korea a few years ago where I was born. And I love speaking with my grandfather who recently passed away. Because I love the way that he shares the stories. And he began to have onset of Alzheimer's, so he would share the same story over and over again. But the thing was, I loved hearing those stories over and over and over again. And part of the story was that he, along with my parents, were both born in what is now called North Korea. Back then, when my father was my age, there was only one country. There was only one Korea. And to hear the stories of them escaping tyranny and persecution, to kind of flee in the middle of the night, to have people shoot at them, to have couple of their relatives killed, to experience what I would consider extreme poverty, to hear stories of my father where his job was to scour the backs of restaurants to collect as many eggshells as possible. And his job was to collect these eggshells and just to grind them for days, and to give it to his mother, my grandmother, who would then place it as soup base in water so that their kids would have some sort of calcium. Those stories are important, extremely important, because it helps us to inform who we are and where we're going as well. And it's important because every now and then you've got crazy people saying that certain things of the past didn't take place. And to imagine that there are folks that are disputing the internment camps, concentration camps, the severity of what transpired with the indigenous people of this country, the plight of African Americans. Man, you got to know your story. And you got to know your story in such a way that you communicate that story again and again and again. Granted, at times in fresh ways, relevant and mindful of our context and culture, but we can't forget where we're from. So that's kind of where I'm from, if you will. I've got some slides that I'll show you, and just for the record, I want you to know that I don't have a clicker with me, so I'm going to be looking over to Sandy, and I'm going to be like winking at her. Don't look at that inappropriately. We're here because there's a common resonance amongst all of us. I think that common resonance, whatever you may want to call it, one way is that we believe in the value of humanity. We believe in human dignity. We believe that every single person matters. Despite their background, orientation, ethnicity, education, tax bracket, whatever it might be, we believe everyone matters. But we're also here not just because we believe in this idealistic notion, we believe in a world that's unjust, that is a little bit skewed. You've been around the block a few times to know that. There's no one needs to be proven of that, but it's amazing even when you look at children. My kids, 12, 10, and 8, even at an early age, they ask questions because as they saw the world from their lens, they realized that things were a little off. And they would often ask the question, two questions. One, why? And two, what can we do? I love these questions because sometimes as we go through the rat race of life, we stop asking those questions. It's a given. Why? And even more deeply, what can we do? But if we're not careful, I suspect that a big danger for all of us is that it's really easy to fall in love with the ideas of justice and compassion. In fact, I would say that probably you as organizers and community leaders, your biggest challenge is not trying to convince your constituents that justice and compassion and generosity and philanthropy are good, because which human idiot would respond by saying, no, I don't believe in justice. I don't believe in generosity. I don't believe in philanthropy. I have yet to meet anyone that opposes the idea of such things. But what's the challenge? The challenge is that we live in a society where we're more in love with the ideas of certain things. Like, I'll give you a personal example. I love the idea of exercise. I love it. I'll read. I subscribe to a couple magazines. You're laughing at my pain right now. But I love the idea. There's no need to convince my mind, but it does not translate into the way that I live. I get so much pushback. I believe that the jury is still out, that it's possible that we live amongst the most overrated generation in human history. I said this at a TED Talk that I did a few years ago, and I got a lot of pushback. And in my defense, I said the jury is still out, but it's because we have this celebrated, elevated perspective of ideas. To elaborate, I think we all love the ideas of compassion, generosity, philanthropy, compassion, until we realize there's a cost to us. And there lies the tension. Why? There is a cost. There is sacrifice required. There is an uphill battle. But I also want you to know, in the great words of Frederick Douglass, there is no progress without struggle. So, this is my family. If I can go to the next slide. So this is my wife and our 3 kids. We look this good all the time. I want you to know that. Our kids go to school in those dresses. This is not even Photoshop. This is just straight photo right here. And the reason why I show you this picture is because it's a reminder not just who we are now, but where we come from. But I want you to realize that part of our story, and part of my story, is that when I speak about the most overrated generation, I'm really speaking about me. I'm a professional talker. I have a very well-read blog. I talk about ideas. I'm a wordsmith. And I realized that in the past few years, in examining my heart, that I was kind of more in love with the ideas, more in love with demonstrations, and more in love with petitions, and more in love with such things. And I'm not trying to discount that those things don't matter. But in my self-examination, I stop when I realize, oh, there's a cost. So I'll just keep tweeting and put something on my Facebook status, and I'll like it at a safe distance. This is why I think, while the jury is still out, we are doing work amongst the most overrated generation, where our involvement is light but not deep and substantive. That's our challenge. So the wake-up call for me took place a few years ago when I trekked to a country called Burma. Burma might be known to some as Myanmar. Now, I don't know about you, I consider myself fairly well read, but I realize that my reading is very surfacey. Like, I don't know about you, just confession, it's been a long time since I've read a book from cover to cover. It's been a long time where I actually read through the entire article. Like, I'm one of those like RSS feed readers. Decipher the title, the first paragraph, and then I'll decide. So I never really knew much about Burma or Myanmar. I didn't realize that there's this great persecution going on. I didn't realize the story of Aung San Suu Kyi, the democratically elected president who received what I would consider to be a huge amount of votes, 59% in the elections in 1990. She was in house arrest somewhere between 1989 for a good chunk until just recently last year. And this is embarrassing. The way that I learned about the story of Burma was through a guy named Bono, who wrote a song in tribute to Aung San Suu Kyi. He wrote a song called Walk On. And in learning more about their story, I realized, wow, how hideous. And so it was a few years ago I had a chance to do some research as I traveled to a few places. And as I trekked into this country, from Thailand across the border into Burma, I was hosted very generously by a couple villages that were basically mobile villages running and hiding from village to village. And I had a chance to visit one of their makeshift schools. And as I walked into this makeshift school, I realized that there was this one poster in this classroom. And when I mean classroom, I'm talking, use your imagination, makeshift chairs, tables. It was a classroom for 1st to 5th graders. And there was this poster about the size of maybe this right here. And as I walked in, I was instantly drawn to this poster because I thought it was so offensive and inappropriate. On this poster of drawings and pictures taped on were images of men, women, and children with missing arms, legs, and oozing bloody body parts. Now, that's inappropriate for a classroom. And I must have had this distorted look on my face because my host says, Eugene, are you okay? And so I had to ask, as unoffensively as I could you explain the meaning of this poster here? Eugene, the reason why we have this poster in this person's broken English is we need to teach our kids how to avoid landmines. Because there are people trying to kill them. I asked this man, one of the leaders of the village, I said, what's hard? Probably not the most astute question to ask. He goes, there's a lot in his broken English. Well, tell me one. He says, well, education is hard. I think all of us understand the value of education in any society. And so I said, well, what about education? He says, well, teachers' salaries. So I had to ask, how much are their salaries? He points out his 4 fingers and says, $40. So, $40 a day. He chuckled at me. And I think as he was chuckling, he was trying to say, you idiot. But I didn't want to ask him that question. And he just kind of just shook his head. So I go, I'm sorry, $40 a week? And he shook his head. I was starting to feel a little nervous. $40 a month? His face turns stoic. I think he's irritated. Shakes his head. I know I'm a reverend, but I'll just confess to you, I was swearing. It's like, what? 40, like you can't go $40 a quarter a month. So I said, $40, $40 a year? And he finally nodded. $40 a year. Now, I share that story not to sound dramatic because all of us have our stories of inequity and injustice and imbalance in the world. And this is not to elevate one cause over the other. As people that are involved in this life, if you will, we have to realize it's not a zero-sum game. We have to widen people's pies and perspectives, if you will. But that story was what really wrecked my life. In difficult ways, but it also made me realize that while we might not be able to change the entire world, gosh, $40, I can do something. My family can do something. I don't know why, but I was inspired at that time. I was reminded of a quote from Mother Teresa. And the quote goes, if you can't feed 100 people, then just feed one. And maybe that's part of our challenge, that sometimes in our lens, sometimes things seem so overwhelming, but part of our challenge and invitation is to somehow compel people that in the midst of paralysis in the larger spectrum of injustice or inequity, we can still make a difference. We got to keep trying. And so I came back to San Francisco, and I shared this story with my wife and our children. Our children back then were about 3 years younger. And in sharing our story, we learned more I taught my kids about many of the things that I was writing about and speaking about, and I confessed to them, I think Daddy has grown more enamored about these things. Like, for example, One Day's Wages is a movement to fight and to alleviate extreme poverty. In about 385 days, we'll be launching our domestic version of One Day's Wages and probably focusing on education and public school teachers. But there are some folks that really have no idea what extreme poverty is. And so I brought some aid and assistance to tell you what extreme poverty is. The World Bank defines extreme poverty with these 5 items, okay? And I'll just show it to you. It's this right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 quarters. Extreme poverty are those who survive on less than 5 quarters a day, $1.25. And there are approximately 1.4 billion people that live in extreme poverty. And just in case you have a hard time distinguishing from B's and M's, I meant 1,400,000,000. There are 900 million people that don't have access to clean water. What the hell? There's 72 million children that are not able to go to school. Now, I share these things, again, because that's not my ammo. I'm not here to compel people with fear or guilt or shame, but to kind of portray, in the midst of great hope, we have great challenges. And I love what Mayor Ed shared, because if for us as Asian Americans or people of color, if our main focus and our only focus, if the ultimate trajectory is to elevate ourselves and our kind, we have seriously failed. And so even as Americans, we have to look at the larger world. And so we came back, and my wife and I, this is where we need your grace. Like, we're not here to like boast about ourselves, but as we talked and prayed, and for us being people of faith and prayer as Christians, we prayed, and I hated this. We were convicted to give up a year's wages. So for 3 years, we made a decision to save as much as we could. We told our kids of this thing. We could not buy anything. Piano lessons stopped. Soccer camps stopped. This was very painful for me personally. I had to sell my midlife crisis car. You laugh at my pain again. I had a 1989 Mazda Miata that I called Blue Thunder. And it was very difficult. And so our year's wages, my wife and I, is $68,000 a year. And so for 3 years. And the reason why I share this, again, it's not to attract praise in some way. It's because one of the most fundamental aspects of leadership, no matter where or what context it might be, is you can never ask anyone to do something you're not willing to do. Because if you do, you're simply a salesman without integrity. You see, we all have an agenda. We all do. We're all selling something. Do we have integrity or do we not? I think one of the reasons why One Day's Wages has resonated with everyday people is because my wife and I, we're just your common middle-class folks that are struggling to get our mortgage payments paid. But they also see the decision that we've made. Now, the reason why it was hard for me is because, let's be honest, I like my money. I like my stuff. We're part of an upward mobility where we want to upgrade every single thing. But it was trying to remind us and our kids how blessed we are. So, while we're mindful of inequity, we have to also count our blessings as well. Do you realize that 80% of the world survive or live on less than $10 US a day? 80%. So my $68,000 a year puts me amongst a pretty amazing crowd. Like, if you look at the 3 richest people in the world, Bill Gates is probably 2 or 3. I call him Billy because we're both from Seattle. Warren Buffett is up there. I call him Buffy. And there's a gentleman in Mexico who I believe is the wealthiest person right now. He hasn't responded to my text messages. I am also amongst the wealthiest people in the world. If you go to a website called globalrichlist.com, and you can just do it for the sake of just doing it, it says, in plugging in my salary, I am the 52,040,162nd richest person in the world. What's up? What is up? I'm gonna spin my rims. Now, I don't know if that sounds impressive to you, but let me put it in the context of percentile. It puts me in the top 0.86 percentile in the world. I'm in the top 1%. But consider the impact. And so we started this organization called One Day's Wages. And our whole thing was to remind people that as we gave up our year's wages to somehow inspire people to consider even their one day's wages, to simplify generosity and philanthropy. You know, your one day's wages, mine is about $269.74, comes out, calculating the days that we don't work on the weekends, 0.4% of your annual wages. But the impact it can make? Well, I gave you one story about that teacher. Do you know that $20 in most parts of the developing world is able to provide clean water for one person for 20 years. Right now, one of our projects is with $20,000, we are planting 200,000 trees in Ethiopia right now. $10 can purchase a bed net to help prevent malaria. $45 can pay annual school tuition for one child. And so this is the impact of one day's wages. So what we're trying to do is to basically create a platform. So this is our challenge together, is that in a democratic view of philanthropy, you also have to have a platform that allows decisions, processes, mechanisms, fundraising, distribution to take place in that manner. And so for about 3 years, as we were saving up and as we had this vision for one day's wages, I thought long and hard for nights, thinking about the platform to which we could mobilize and inspire. Not just philanthropy, because listen, everyone loves the idea of philanthropy, but to be able to do it in a way that was accessible, simple, and that was also, if I can say this loosely, viral. That it could spread, that people would do. People don't realize how small one day's wages is. We work in a 200 square foot office. I have one paid staff. Our budget is $55,000 a year. And so part of our thing is we communicated to our folks that 100% of all their donations would go to projects around the world, and that somehow I would raise the funds to run our operations on the side. And for the first year and a half, I asked my blog readers if they would give to this vision, and they gave $71,000. And so I'll explain more about this, but we created a platform where this democratic concept could really take hold. What if we can give people to think about giving a day's wages? And so we have a calculator on our website. You plug in your salary, and it gives you your day's wages to make it simple. You should just try it and accidentally push donate after that. It's cool. Everyone's doing it. Well, what you should do is calculate it, put your hands up, and your neighbors push donate. So these are our platforms, and I'll share you some of these stories. Cindy, I've got about 15 minutes, less than that. Be honest, it's okay. That's 10? 10? Okay, let's go to the next image. So let me just share with you a few of the stories of things that we're involved with. This is a story of Burmese kids that are illegal because they're living in Thailand and they can't go to school. There's 72 million children. Next slide. Did you know that, as Mayor Ed shared, it's not just here, but we also know, probably on a bigger scale, on a global level, the inequity against women is pretty amazing. According to the United Nations, women do 66% of the world's work, produce 50% of the world's food, but earn 10% of the world's income and only own 1% of the world's property. It's the oldest injustice in the world. And this project is in Kenya as we work not just with women farmers, but to really train them, empower them, and to allow them and their communities to make their own decisions. Next slide. This is a story of women in Congo that we're working with, and this is specifically for women that are victims of what they call gender violence. Gender violence is a very politically correct way of saying rape. More often than not, rape that takes place during war. We raised $25,000 to be able to give 250 women Fresh Start kits. Fresh Start kits, really simple. They get training, they get some counseling, they receive a small livestock, They receive a sewing machine so that they can have and support themselves. Let's go on. So in the next few slides, and then we'll end in the next 7 or 8 minutes, people ask, well, how do you do this? So we're less than 2 years old. Our advertising budget is about $5,000, T-shirts, some stickers. It's really grassroots. But we realize that our biggest asset is not money. It's people. You invest in people, not just in these projects in other parts of the world, but invest in people to realize that we're part of a larger network, if you will. And so somehow, slowly but surely, we've been encouraged by the responses that we've gotten. This is a school in Southern California that held a benefit concert for us for our projects in Haiti after the earthquake. They raised $10,000. When the Haiti earthquake took place, we were stunned because, not just because we were only less than 2 months old as an organization, but even despite that, we were receiving donations from around the world. And I remember tweeting something. I said, thank you. We received donations from every single continent in the world, except Antarctica. And in less than a minute, someone sends in a donation and says, on the note, for the people of Antarctica. Go Twitter. Next slide. 190 elementary and middle school kids in Taiwan this past year raised $21,350. That was part of a project that enabled over 13,000 kids in Cambodia to receive clean water. Next slide. Hip-hop shows, b-boy competitions. That's not me, unfortunately. Next slide. And this is an example of just people around that are just simply donating their birthdays. Perhaps some of you might consider giving up your birthdays, not just this year, but regularly. This is a kid named Naomi who turned 6 years old, or 4 years old, and she and her family have decided to give up their birthdays every single year. She might need counseling, but that's not my business. She raised about $1,500. Next slide. Not to sound, again, narcissistic, I was so encouraged that the New York Times saw this and recognized the impact of everyday small donors. You see, the reason why this is important is because we're so enamored by the rock stars and billionaires and celebrities. I get meetings with these organizations that say, man, if we can just land a celebrity. And I go, that's not sustainable. Your assets are everyday people. And so the New York Times ran this article. And then they wrote another article about One Day's wages and other folks. Mashable featured an article about One Day's wages. NPR wrote a story. And you know how all of that took place? We don't have a PR firm. I realized that you might not get press, but don't seek press. Here's the thing. The best way to be great storytellers is to live a great story. An honest story. It's the best way. So my time has run out. Look forward to spending some time with you afterwards. Blessings to all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Music this morning, and now I just feel like we just went to church. Woo, okay. I want to just thank you, Eugene. You're someone who is living a great story, and we really want to applaud you for that. AAPIP recently, which was his idea, purchased one day's water bottles for everyone here. And again, he mentioned 900 million people live without access to clean and safe water, and this will help to support that effort. So it's in the back there, and please get it. Grab it on your way out. Thank you again, Eugene. It's amazing. Okay, so it's my personal honor to introduce Kent Wong. He's a trustee of the New World Foundation. I know, where I want to add that it's one of the few foundations that has not only committed, but actually lived up to the fulfillment of having community activists and practitioners make up the majority of their board. And he's an example of that. In his day job, he's the director of the Center for Labor Research and Education at UCLA, and he's the founder of many, many things, but I think one that's really made an impact in the community is the founder of Asian American Labor Alliance. Under Kent's leadership, the center has become a vital resource for research, education, and policy development. It's helped to create jobs that are good for workers and for their communities, to improve the quality of existing jobs in the low-wage economy, and to strengthen the process of immigration integration, especially among students and youth. We invited Kent today because of his ability to put our economy into a broader picture, and from the standpoint of those who live on economic margins. Today he's going to talk to us about how he and others are building leadership of university students, addressing local and national policy on equal access to higher education and pathways to citizenship. I just want to add a personal note that Kent is someone who's just a rock in the community. He's been unwavering, steady, impenetrable in the best ways possible. And I've nicknamed him the preacher of justice. And in a few minutes, you'll see why. Please join me in welcoming Kent Wong.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And thank you not only for inviting me here and these extraordinary young people who you'll be meeting in just a minute, but also for the amazing job that AAPIP does all over the country, not only in terms of supporting grassroots social movements, supporting women's issues, gay and lesbian issues, supporting youth, supporting democratic philanthropy. And so it is so great to be in this group gathering today. It is so great to be with my old friend Ed Lee and my new friend Eugene Cho. I think AAPIP today must stand for Asian American politicians, preachers, and professors. But please join us, David Cho and Catherine Eusebio, who will be speaking in just a minute, and Ju Hong, are you in the house? Ju Hong? Come on up when he gets here. So, you know, I've been teaching at UCLA for the past 20 years. I teach Asian American Studies. I teach in the Labor Studies program. What?
Oh, you just sound. You keep the podium.
Oh, use the podium?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
I'll take off my portable mic here. So I've been teaching Asian American Studies and Labor Studies for the past 20 years. I teach a class with Reverend Jim Lawson on nonviolence and social movements. I teach a class on Asian Americans in the law, and I also teach a class on undocumented immigrant students. And while I've taught for the past 20 years, the most extraordinary students in my career have been my undocumented students. And I have never met a group that are more committed, that are more dedicated to pursuing their educational goals than these young leaders. Undocumented students throughout the country have huge barriers in terms of pursuing their educational dreams. In most places, they can't qualify for in-state tuition. California is one of only 10 or so states in the country that provide for in-state tuition for undocumented immigrant students. In most places, they can't get a driver's license. In most places, they can't apply for any form of financial aid. Hopefully, that will change soon if Governor Brown signs AB 131 here in the state of California in the coming few days. But up till this point, what that has meant for undocumented immigrant students in the state of California is essentially you can't get a driver's license, you can't get financial aid, you can't get student loans, although you pay into the system that provides for scholarships for low-income students. You yourself, because of your status, cannot qualify for that fund. And even after graduating from UCLA, from UC Berkeley, from any Cal State in the state of California, you cannot legally work. So in spite of that, these young leaders persevere, and they're doing amazing things. And it means that they have to take public transportation 2 hours to and from school. It means that they have to work in the underground economy, mowing lawns and cleaning houses and taking care of kids. It means that during finals week and when their papers are due, they're sleeping overnight in the library and showering in the gym to save that commute time each day. And yet that is the determination and sacrifice that they are making to pursue their educational dreams, to commit their resources and energy to serve our communities. And so I taught the very first class at UCLA on the issue of undocumented immigrant students. And our students put out this book called Underground Undergrads, UCLA Undocumented Immigrant Students Speak Out. And this was a way of honoring their stories, lifting up their voices, and providing an opportunity for undocumented immigrant students to emerge from the shadows and to let the world know who they are and what they're all about. And I just wanted to briefly share the story of one of my former students who was my teaching assistant for this class, a young woman by the name of Tam Tran. Tam is Vietnamese, but she's never lived in Vietnam. Her parents were boat people who fled in 1975 after the fall of Saigon. Unlike most of Tam's parents' family and friends who were rescued at sea by US naval boats and brought to this country, Tam's parents had the misfortune of being rescued by a German naval boat. So instead of coming to this country, they were shipped off to Germany. That's where Tam was born. So at the age of 6, Tam Tran came to this country with her parents to be reunited with her family and friends in California. So for over 20 years, her family fought the horrendous bureaucratic morass of the immigration system and were never able to get legal status in this country. So Tam Tran was not only undocumented, she was stateless. She was not a Vietnamese citizen because she never lived in Vietnam. She was not a German citizen because Germany does not grant citizenship based on birthright. And although she lived in this country over 20 years, our government refused to acknowledge her as one of our own. So Tam Tran was a brilliant young woman. She graduated from UCLA. She was a gifted filmmaker. She developed these incredible documentaries that captured the stories of undocumented immigrant students. Upon graduating, she worked with me at the UCLA Labor Center as an intern. She was the very first undocumented student intern that I had the privilege of working with. And because not only was she undocumented, she was stateless, she was one of the courageous young people who stepped up to the plate and testified in Congress back in 2007 during the national debate on the Federal DREAM Act. So she took a huge risk by going public, by sharing her story, and by testifying in Congress. And Congressman Tancredo, one of the anti-immigrant leaders of Congress at that point, when he saw her, he pointed and said, "This is an illegal alien. She should be deported. She has no right to speak in US Congress." And yet other members of Congress who invited her said, "No, she is here on the invitation of members of Congress so that she can testify on something that impacts hundreds of thousands of immigrant youth throughout the country." Tam's eloquent testimony is captured in this book. A few days after she testified in Congress, ICE agents staged a raid on her family's apartment in Orange County. They dragged her mother, father, and brother out in their bedclothes before the sun even came up, and they held them in detention. And Tam, who was working with me, went into hiding. She went underground because she was afraid that the ICE agents were actually coming after her. And it was only through a national effort to mobilize support for Tam and her family that we were able to get the release of her parents and her brother. And even in those dire times, Tam said to me, "You know, I'm one of the lucky ones, because most immigrants, when they get picked up, they have no one to turn to. There's no one that they can call to have them assist their families. But because I testified in Congress, because I work here at the UCLA Labor Center, there are people that I can turn to who can help me with my family." So her parents and brother were released. When they were released, metal ankle bracelets were placed around their ankles so that they would be monitored 24/7. And they had to stand by a wall socket 2 hours each day in order to recharge the batteries so that the ICE agents can monitor their every move 24/7. So this is what immigrants in our society face every day: the threat and fear of deportation, the threat and fear of being torn apart from their families, and to be subjugated to our horrendous broken immigration laws. Under Barack Obama, 1 million immigrants have been deported. 1 million immigrants. And the unfortunate scenario is that not only is this doing nothing to aid our economy, but it is playing directly into the hands of the anti-immigrant forces who are trying to convince the people of this country that it is immigrants who are to blame for our economic crisis, that it is immigrants who are to blame for the shortage of jobs. And it doesn't have anything to do with corporate greed, with the housing speculators, with Wall Street, corruption, with these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that are draining the financial resources and human resources of our country. So it is playing directly into the hands of the right wing, who are trying to scapegoat immigrants in ways that are tearing apart the fabric within our society and blaming immigrants for something that they have nothing to do with, and that is our economic crisis. Now, Tam Tran was accepted to 5 different PhD programs throughout the country: UC Berkeley, UCLA, University of Michigan, Yale, and Brown. The public universities, by law, were barred from giving her a dime in financial aid. Both Yale and Brown offered her a full ride to pursue her PhD program. She entered a PhD program at Brown University in American Studies, and she said, "Perhaps if I get a PhD in American Studies, they will finally let me become an American." But the reality is that her dreams were cut short, and last May, she and her best friend, Cynthia Felix, also an undocumented immigrant student, were killed in a car accident at the hands of a drunk driver. So we are putting out a new book in a couple months called Undocumented and Unafraid. And it is a book that will celebrate the lives and contributions of Tam Tran and of Cynthia Felix, another UCLA graduate who went on to a master's program in public health in Columbia. And it was Tam and Cynthia who tragically passed away last May. Our new book, Undocumented and Unafraid, not only will honor the lives of these 2 remarkable young women, but will also capture the stories of this new emerging immigrant youth movement that is inspiring millions of people throughout the country. And I am so pleased and so honored that we have 3 leaders of this movement present with us today. In the last year, immigrant youth have emerged as a conscience of this country. There are over 2 million undocumented immigrant youth and children throughout the country. 2 million. 2 million lives on hold, 2 million young people living in the shadows, 2 million people who are being discarded by our society. And let us be very clear that one of the reasons why these 2 million young people are not being allowed to fully contribute to our society is because, unlike immigrants in the past who mainly came from Europe, these immigrants come from Asia and from Latin America. And so there is a very ugly racial dimension to the oppression of this new generation of immigrant youth today. And it is something that particularly those of us in the Asian American community have not come to terms with. That indeed 70% of Asians living in this country are immigrants, 70%. There is a higher percentage of immigrants within the Asian American community than even within the Latino community. And although there are 65,000 undocumented immigrant students who graduate from high school each year, and over 25,000 who graduate from high schools in California each year, that they have no future until we can change the broken immigration system in our country. And within the University of California, 40% of undocumented immigrant students are Asian, 40%. So we have gathered with us today 3 amazing, courageous, undocumented students who have come out of the shadows, who have proclaimed that they are undocumented and unafraid, and that they have put themselves on the line to be here with us today. For many of you gathered in the room, you don't think a second thought about hopping on a plane and going to a conference. For each of these students, every time they got on a plane, they were taking a risk because they could be pulled over by ICE and they could be deported because of their status. Anytime one of us will speak before an audience, we are not taking a risk. But each and every time one of these young people steps forward before a microphone, before a camera, they are taking a risk. They know that they have no legal status in this country and that they are making this sacrifice. They are taking this act of courage because they know that the greater risk to them and to their classmates and to their communities is to remain silent. So we truly applaud the leadership, the vision, and the courage of these young people who have stepped forward and who are carrying on the traditions of the Freedom Riders. This is the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Rides, when college students risked their lives to challenge racism and Jim Crow exclusion in the South. And like generations past, these young people are also stepping to the plate. They're also taking great risks and exhibiting great courage to be with us today and to build a movement of immigrant youth throughout the country. So I wanted to show a short clip featuring David Cho on CNN. David Cho just graduated this June from UCLA. He's entering the master's program in public policy at UCLA next Monday, as in day after tomorrow. He was the drum major for the UCLA marching band, and he was one of a select few leaders nationally who were acknowledged by the Freedom from Fear Award that was given by a number of foundations who are committed to the issues of immigrant rights. David will be my teaching assistant when we teach the class this fall, once again, on undocumented immigrant students. and he established the very first Asian American undocumented student organization at UCLA. So please enjoy this clip of David Cho, and then we'll call him up.
Along with thousands of others, David Cho hit the streets of Los Angeles making the case for immigration reform.
You said that change in this country comes not from the top down, but from the bottom up. So I'm here today to ask that you give us a chance.
While Arizona's new state law 1070 was front and center at the rally, David Cho says he is focused on the DREAM Act because he's running out of time.
I'm an AB 540 student, I'm undocumented. But while most of my friends I went to work with after graduation, I will not be able to even put my name down on a job application because of my status.
The DREAM Act, which has been introduced multiple times in various forms in Congress, would give children in the United States who are here illegally a path to citizenship if they finish high school and go to college or join the armed services. David arrived here 10 years ago illegally with his parents from Korea. He's now a junior at UCLA, where he's a member of the marching band and working on a double major in international finance and Korean. As it stands now, when David graduates, he'll have to leave the United States if he wants to put his education to work.
So it's frustrating, it's saddening, and I just wish, the DREAM Act could pass so that, million students like myself can contribute back to this economy by working for this country as well.
David Cho was just one of an estimated 100,000 people that showed up to the May Day rally in Los Angeles over the weekend. Organizers are hoping that the sheer number of people that showed up here today will send a clear message to Washington to take action. Ted Rowlands, CNN, Los Angeles.
Please help me welcome David Cho.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today with you. It's a great honor. Never have I ever gotten a standing ovation from a crowd. You really didn't have to do that for me. As Kent mentioned, I just graduated from UCLA with a bachelor's degree in economics. CNN actually got it wrong. And I will be going back to UCLA this upcoming Monday to start my master's program in public policy at UCLA. I've been very fortunate enough to be part of the UCLA marching band the last 4 years, and I actually became the first Korean American and actually the first undocumented student to ever become a drum major in UCLA history. So as a drum major, I was very fortunate to lead the 250-member marching band in front of 75,000 people during our football games at the Rose Bowl and in front of 12,000 people during our basketball games at the legendary Pauley Pavilion. But I'm not here to share my experience as a UCLA drum major, but as an undocumented student. Like many of you in this room, or your parents, or your grandparents, or your great-grandparents, my parents brought me to this country when I was about 9 years old, along with my 2 younger sisters, in search of a better life and opportunity. And when I first got here, it was very hard for me to adjust to the new environment because I didn't know any English. In fact, I didn't even know the alphabet. And to make the matter worse, growing up, I was actually both physically and verbally abused by bullies in schools. And so I had a terrible pain in my heart. I was scarred emotionally, and I still have a physical scar right here on my face. And I think, ironically, this pain motivated me to learn English, to study hard, to graduate from my high school with a 3.9 GPA. And like many seniors in their high school, I was very excited to apply to college, and the day when I applied to UCLA completely changed my life. The UCLA application asked me for my name and my social security number, so of course I typed in my name. But under my social security number, I didn't know what that was, so I went to my dad and I asked him, "Dad, what's my social security number?" At first he tries to avoid the question, tries to beat around the bush, and he finally looks down and says, "David, you don't have a social security number." he goes inside his room, brings out a paper from the USCIS immigration officials, and shows it to me. And that day I was terrified because I learned that after going through the legal process for 8 to 9 years, our family's visa had expired because our sponsor had mismanaged our paperwork, and we kept trying to appeal, and it never worked out. And that's how I found out that I was undocumented. And because I'm undocumented, as Kent mentioned earlier, can't get a driver's license, can't work here legally even after graduating from UCLA. I can't even write down my name on a state or federal financial aid application. And when I first found out about my status, I was totally ashamed. In our Asian community, there's this huge negative stigma, and it's really hard for us undocumented Asian students to come out freely. And when I decided to come out during my second year at UCLA, the night before, I actually wrote a will or a farewell letter to my friends and family because I didn't know what would happen to me. I didn't know whether I would get deported or shot, taken away. I had no idea. Not many students were speaking out at that time, especially Asian dreamers. But I decided to do it because someone like Kent inspired me when he said, we undocumented students, we take a great risk by speaking out in public, but the greater risk is to remain silent in the face of injustice. And that's why I decided to speak out. Going through UCLA during the last 4 years, it was a huge challenge for me. Because I couldn't work legally, I tutored SAT to high school students 25 to 30 hours a week. Because I couldn't drive, I had to commute 1.5 hours each way to school every day. And like Kent mentioned, when it got way too late, I just ended up staying at my friend's couch. I slept in their closets. I even slept in the UCLA school library. But it's a huge privilege for me to share my story. And even though I take this great risk, I'm so happy to do it for not only our Asian American community, but for every undocumented students throughout the country. You know, unfortunately, I'm not the only one in this situation. As we all know, 65,000 students graduate from high school every year, only to realize that even after graduating from a prestigious university like Harvard, with a triple major, they still won't be able to work here legally. And it's just a shame that we lived in this society. I have a friend named Matthias who graduated from UCLA. Just got a word from him yesterday that now, he's in a deportation proceeding and he has an ankle bracelet, just like Tam's family once had. And now he has to stand next to a wall every day for 2 hours to recharge his ankle bracelet. That's a shame. And we must do something together as an Asian American community to fix the system. I say this when I come out publicly that as undocumented students, we feel like we're living in an invisible prison cell. I can walk freely here, but there are these invisible bars in front of us that limits us from doing the things that we want to do, that our U.S. citizen friends can do. And the unfortunate reality is that 40% of the undocumented students in the UC system are Asian American students. 40% of them. And that's a huge surprising fact because when we think about immigration, we often think of Latino and Latina students. But we have so many students who are trapped, whose lives and dreams have been crushed by a minority of senators just last December. And it is such a shame. We realize that only a few Asian students speak out. Why? As I mentioned, there's that huge negative stigma. And while their community support from California, from across the country, from organizations like Korean Resource Center in LA, Kiwa, Asian Law Caucus, AAPIP, and so many other Asian organizations, we're still not there yet. And I hate to say it, but our support for our undocumented Asian students is still not there yet. And we need to improve on this dramatically. And we need to give support and assistance for these students to come out freely, to say that they're undocumented and unafraid. Because right now, we're not at that level. You know, we often say immigration is not only a Latina issue, but it's an Asian American issue as well. Yet, that has become another rhetoric. It's just become another rhetoric, and there is not much action. We know that. And so, today, as an undocumented student, speaking on behalf of thousands of undocumented Asian American students throughout this country, I just really want to challenge you by asking you this question. Are we, as AAPI leaders and organizers, are we going to just sit by the sideline and allow some of our politicians to criminalize our community and use our kids' lives as their political weapon and agenda? Are we going to continue to do that? Or are we, as AAPI leaders, going to step up to this national movement and do something about it? I see many of you guys nodding, and you guys are ready for it. Are we ready for it? Yes. Are we ready to rise up to this national movement? Yes. We're all ready. We just need to think about what Eugene Cho said earlier, that when it comes to giving to our community, we need to forget about the cost that we have, that the cost that brings to our community, but think about the people who are in this travesty. Another challenge that I want to give you is to really reflect back on the reason why you wanted to be part of this philanthropy world in the first place. Did you want to give back to the community, the Asian American community? Was it out of self-interest? I don't know what it is that's inside your heart. I can't read it. But I know that some of you in this room have a heart full of compassion, care, and love. And that's why you're here with everyone here today, and that's why you wanted to be part of this philanthropy world. Speaking of love, just want to end by saying that my parents are the epitome of love. My dad, just about 2 weeks ago, said one thing that I'll never forget. He said that, he told me, David, you know, your mom and I work so hard for you and your younger sisters because we want you to be happy in the future. And right now, we understand that we're in this process of building a freeway for you so that one day you can ride this freeway smoothly and freely without any bumps, without any hesitation. And we're doing this for you. And when we look back at the times when we're on a freeway ourselves, we rarely think about those people who dedicated their lives to make that freeway for us, and we take it for granted, right? We simply ride this freeway thinking it was their job, they took their time, but because of them, we take this freeway to go to work, to come to this place. Because of them, we are at a society where we are. And I'm so grateful to have parents like that who have such amazing love for my family, to say that they will dedicate their lives to create this freeway for me and my younger sisters. So as an AAPI community, as we look back at the times when our Chinese immigrants, when our Asian immigrants came here to build the railroads, especially in California, I ask that you think back and reflect on their lives and their dedications that they have given to our society. And I ask and challenge our AAPI community to build this freeway, for our young AAPI leaders who will one day take that freeway and take our country into the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for those powerful words. Our next youth leader is Catherine Eusebio. She is a student at UC Berkeley. She is also one of the student authors for our new book, Undocumented and Unafraid. She is a leader of ASPIRE, which stands for Asian Students for Immigration Reform Through Education. And this was the very first Asian American undocumented student organization right here in the Bay Area that has played a major role in lifting the stories and building support for Asian American undocumented students. Catherine.
All right. It is such an honor to be here. When Ken asked me to speak at this event, I was really excited. And yesterday, to prepare for the event, I decided to cut my hair because I wanted to impress you all. And I see so many crying faces in the audience. I hope it's not that bad. And I had the honor to speak after Eugene Cho. And even though I don't have a job and I can't work in America, I was just like, oh man, I'm going to pledge my wages. Yes, I will. So through the summer, I met Kent and I met David at the UCLA Labor Center, and through this internship that we had, I had the opportunity to hear Reverend James Lawson speak. And Reverend James Lawson was a leader of the civil rights movement, and he led trainings on nonviolent resistance. And I will never forget how he addressed us, and he said, for undocumented students, the most basic form of civil disobedience is getting an education. And to compare the emotional, physical, and verbal abuse that students sitting at lunch counters faced, just trying to getting a fair meal in the segregated South, to getting an education, that was so profound to me. And that as I graduate this semester from UC Berkeley, that will always be in my mind, that how transformative it is and how powerful it is in our society to enable someone to get an education. And so today, I just want to explain briefly my educational journey with you, and it starts in the Philippines. In 1993, my family moved all the way from Manila, Philippines to Fremont, California, just so that, like many other immigrants, so that I could get an education, so that my brother and I could do so much better than whatever was happening in the Philippines. And all I knew, I was 4, so all I knew is that I'm the youngest, and I have a family here, so I'm going to get all the presents, and I'm going to get all the attention, so I could come to America and just be with my family again. And at the time, when I was growing up in America, it didn't matter to me that I was an immigrant, because I believed in the American dream. And in America, we tell our children that it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter who your family are. All it matters is that you work hard in America and you can get what you want. And so for me, my parents told me, just work hard in school and everything will pay off. Just work hard. It doesn't matter what challenges lie ahead of you. It just all depends on yourself. And so in high school, I was extremely studious. In my senior year, my best friend was AP Calculus. We spent a really great spring break together. That's the only face I saw was my textbook. So by the end of my senior year, I graduated and I had been accepted to my top choice university. And at the time it was UC San Diego, but it doesn't matter, I'm in Berkeley now. So I graduated and I was ready to go because it didn't matter, right? It didn't matter that my parents were undocumented or that my family's undocumented, or it doesn't matter that we came here as immigrants. It mattered that I worked hard and I got in, and that's all that validated America's promise to me. But in that same summer, 2007, same summer that Congress failed to pass immigration reform, I couldn't go to college. Instead, I had to go to community college. And that was the most heartbreaking experience, coupled with the failure of immigration reform. Imagine being heartbroken at 18 and your life is just beginning. And so I asked my mom, why can't I go to my university? I worked this hard for it, why can't I go? And she said to me in Tagalog, kahit I'm sorry, obviously I'm not native Tagalog speaker. So she said, kahit ipinipatay mo ako, wala akong pera ibibigay sa'yo. And that means is, even if you bled me dry, even if you killed me, I couldn't give you enough money to go to school. And for the longest time, I had blamed my mom. As the parent, it was her that was supposed to worry about the finances. All I would do is just be a good student, and then she would provide the rest for me. But that wasn't the case. And it took a lot of healing, and it took being involved in Aspire, Asian students promoting immigrant rights through education. It took me to be involved in my Asian American community to heal all that pain from politics. And so after I transferred to UC Berkeley, after I got involved, every single semester is still another struggle. Even after my first semester at Berkeley, it wasn't even studying that was the hard part. I was so disappointed because my GPA had dropped in my first semester. It went from a 4.0 to a 3.9. I was like, oh man, this sucks. But really, what was stressing me out at night, what was causing me to stay up at night was that I couldn't pay for school. And even in my first semester, I almost had to drop out again. And it took a lot of support from community foundations and from scholarships so that I could continue school. I was supposed to graduate last spring with a bachelor's in political science, but I couldn't. Cost of tuition was just too expensive. And so I spent all that time applying to as many scholarships as I could. I didn't meet my target goal, but it was still enough for me to graduate this December without any debt. And I recognize that that's largely my parents' contribution, but also the support of my Asian American community to, one, empower me to be able to speak, and two, to provide me with financial resources. The thing is that for many undocumented students, the hugest struggle is finances. And that there are many scholarships out there, especially for undocumented students, but a lot of them are reserved for Latino students and Latina students. And it's really frustrating because when I turn to my Asian American community, I don't see that same support, as David was saying. But the exciting thing is that we have the power to change this today. Even though, so two important things are happening right now. One is, sadly, that the UC Regents are considering another fee hike. This past week alone, they've spoken about the possibility of tuition rising to $22,000 a year. And that's without housing, that's without books, that's without food, that's just tuition. Second exciting thing is that AB 130 and AB 131 are close to passing. Or AB 130 has passed for sure, but AB 130, we still have a step to go. It's on Governor Brown's desk. So we're here today because we want to make a change in the Asian American community. And that starts with ourselves. So take what you've learned here, take what you've heard here today and bring it back to your families. Not only should we be preaching the importance of education and pursuing that, like as historically we've always done, but also are we emphasizing the importance of civic engagement? As we are faced, where our barriers are often created by politicians, do we feel empowered? Are we encouraging our communities to fight back against those barriers? And I really want to challenge you to encourage your families, yourselves, to step up in the political process. Oh, everyone's staring at me. I hope this is good. And secondly, how can we be more supportive of the educational process so that when our 44% of undocumented students are Asian, how are we supporting them? And I want to challenge you to think about that today. And I want to end with a really powerful quote, but I can't think of one. So I'll just say, that I'm so thrilled and happy to meet all of you and to speak in front of this audience. And I know that together we can make so many profound changes in the future. Thanks.
All three of these young leaders participated in a powerful experience this summer called Dream Summer. And the UCLA Labor Center, in partnership with United We Dream, a national network of undocumented student organizations, sponsored an internship program to place 102 DREAM Act leaders with social justice organizations throughout California, Arizona, Florida, New York, and Washington, D.C. David Cho was one of the national coordinators of this initiative, and both Catherine and Ju Hong were participants in the Dream Summer program up here in the Bay Area. So I wanted to show you a very short clip from Dream Summer 2011 that really celebrates the amazing contributions of this group of extraordinary leaders all across the country. Dream Summer 2011. A special place for you to be gathering to launch the very first ever Dream Summer, the very first ever national internship and scholarship program for undocumented immigrant students. We are making history today, and each and every one of you will continue to make history in the months and the years to come. And if you will look around this room, I guarantee you that the people that have come together for this event are going to be leading forces within our society for social and economic justice. You will be leading major institutions. You will be leading major organizations within our communities that will bring about a better society, a better day for people throughout this country.
In 2010, the DREAM Act student movement gained support from millions of people throughout the nation.
With almost no paid staff, no lobbyists, and few financial resources, undocumented immigrant students mobilized a powerful movement.
Although the U.S. Senate failed to overcome a filibuster by a minority of senators,
the movement itself came closer than ever to pass the federal DREAM Act.
Undocumented young people displayed leadership necessary to bring this campaign to the forefront.
These actions included the Trail of Dreams,
a journey on foot for hundreds of miles,
a national caravan from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C.,
hunger strikes across the nation,
and civil disobedient actions in the halls of Congress.
In order to allow these current leaders to continue to develop their leadership skills,
the UCLA Labor Center and the United We Dream Network launched a national internship program for DREAM Act student leaders called Dream Summer 2011.
For a period of 10 weeks, DREAM Act student leaders interned for social justice, labor, and community organizations.
During the 3-day training, interns engaged in talking circles, trainings, and workshops.
From Kent Wong, the director of the UCLA Labor Center, Reverend James Lawson, an iconic figure in the civil rights movement, Pablo Alvarado, the executive director of Endelon, Peter Shea, an immigration attorney, Tom Sines, president and general counsel for MALDEF, California Assemblyman Gil Cedillo, among many others. Dream Summer 2011 was a historic event. It created the space and network to connect with dreamers, professionals, allies, and organizations throughout the nation. It also provided tools and resources to sustain our movement and push forward in a strategic fashion. I'm proud to have been a part of it, and I hope that what we started here will help strengthen our movement and manifest our collective dream.
We're gonna
Over the course of the 10 weeks, these 102 DREAM Act leaders did extraordinary things. They organized car wash workers in Los Angeles. DREAM Act students in Miami, Florida organized TSA workers at the Miami airport. Is that bold? DREAM Act students in Sacramento pounded the halls of the state legislature, going up to Republican members of the California State Assembly and Senate, pronouncing that I am an undocumented student. I'm trying to finish my college education. Would you support me by voting for AB 130 and AB 131? And they celebrated the passage of AB 130, the first time that the first part of the California DREAM Act was enacted, and we are on the verge of celebrating the signing of AB 131, which would open up financial resources to DREAM Act students in the state of California. During the 10 weeks, DREAM Act students participated in the very first US Senate hearing in Congress on the Federal DREAM Act, where 2 members of the cabinet spoke in favor of the Federal DREAM Act. Our students did national press conferences, they organized youth actions, they mobilized their communities throughout the country. And in addition, there were 2 separate civil disobedience actions, the first ever in the state of California during the 10-week internship. Ju Hong, our next speaker, was the very first Asian American DREAM student who voluntarily submitted to arrest, risking deportation to fight for the rights of DREAM Act students throughout the country. Ju Hong was student body president of Laney College. He is currently a student senator at UC Berkeley. He will be graduating this June. Please help me welcome Ju Hong.
Thank you. I don't know what else to say because Kent, David, and Catherine knocked everything down. Can I leave now, Kent? Good morning, everybody. My name is Ju Hong. I'm a 4th year at UC Berkeley, studying political science, and I hope to graduate next year. And eventually, I want to go to law school and become an immigration attorney to serve our community. And that's my goal that I have in mind. But before I share my story, I really want you to imagine for a second with me. Imagine that your home was burglarized and your door was completely shattered and your windows are shattered and your belongings were gone, like laptop, TV, cell phones, and entire family was terrified. And what would you do at that moment? Well, for my case, a couple of years ago, our house got burglarized, and obviously the door was broken, the windows were completely shattered, and our belongings were gone. Something that is really important to me. And my mom and my sister was terrified. And my immediate reaction was to call police. And my mom immediately stopped and said, "Ju, do not call police. What if you get deported?" And this is not something new to our community. If my sister were to be sexually harassed, she's not gonna call police just because she's afraid of being deported. And just like many other undocumented immigrants, I was living in the shadow and in a constant fear of being deported. Just to share my little bit of background, I was born and raised in South Korea until I was 11 years old. And when I was in South Korea, our family owned a small Japanese restaurant business in downtown Seoul. And we invest a lot of money in that business. However, the things didn't work out because of the IMF. The economy didn't work out, and we had to borrow a lot of loans from different relatives and pull out a lot of loans from different companies. And as a childhood memory, I remember our family had to move like different places like each month, everywhere. At first, I didn't know why we were doing that, but later I learned that because we wanted to avoid from private debt collectors coming home late at night demanding for money. And I remember clearly one night when two big guys with the black suit came home late at night drunk and broke into our door and grabbed a chair and smashed the window and demanding for the money. And I remember that night where my mom, knelt down and just begging for us to give us some time to, pay and to not hurt me or my sister. I remember those times clearly. It's been very tough in South Korea, and and eventually, a couple months later, our business had to shut down, and we had to file bankruptcy. And then a year after, my mom and my dad had to divorce. Ever since then, I lived with my mom and my sister, barely surviving how to come to South Korea. And clearly, we ate only one meal a day, surviving in one small cubicle room, barely surviving paying the month. And it was very tough for me to survive in that place, my country, South Korea. But we were able to manage it. And one day, my mom just came up to me and said, "We are going to America." And I said, "America?" I'm like, "Why?" And she said, I'm like, "Why are we going to America?" Because I don't know anything about the culture, the language. I don't know anybody there. I have friends here, my relatives here, and I grew up in South Korea. And why are we going there? And she said, "We're just gonna go there for 3 years and come back. In fact, I'll take you to the Disneyland." And with her, she had really good rhetoric skills or whatever. I was convinced to go. But obviously her intention was to, provide better life for me and my older sister. And so in 2001, we decided to move to the United States. Just 3 of us, me, my sister, and my mom. Just 3 of us. We didn't know anybody there, only one relative's friend in LA area. And we got here in 2001. And ever since then, I grew up in the Bay Area, in Alameda. And, I just grew up just like any other American kid. I went to public school, spoke English, joined different clubs and organizations, joined AP classes, and most importantly, I had a dream to go to college. I really wanted to go to college, but during my senior year in high school, as David mentioned, while I was filling out my college application, I didn't know my social security number. And so I approached to my mom and, what's my social security number? And she said that we don't have one. And later I learned that I came here with a tourist visa for the 6 to 8 months, I believe, and then she extended again. And she tried to work through it out with the student visa or other ways around to stay here, but it didn't work out. And later I learned that also the lawyer that she hired scammed us. She took advantage. The lawyers took advantage of our immigration status to take a chunk of money, and just left it behind with the undocumented status. And at first, I didn't know what it meant to be undocumented. But obviously, as Catherine and David mentioned, we cannot get a job. We cannot get any financial aid or scholarships. Very limited scholarship opportunities, and it's very difficult. And even though I, got into really prestigious universities like UC Davis, UC San Diego, and many different prestigious universities, but I couldn't go just because of the financial difficulties and because of my immigration status. And at that point, I was very disappointed, and whether if I should go back to South Korea or try to stay here and fight back. And it was very difficult, but as I look at my mom working so hard for me, working 2 jobs, full time, 7 days a week, just to support my education. I knew I had to stay here. I knew I wanted to get the education and, help my family and help our community at the end. And so I decided to go back to Laney College, in community college, and I studied really hard while I got a job in a Japanese restaurant under the table. Even though I get the low wages and a little bit of tip, but it's like that's the only way to pay for me to college tuition and kind of living expenses and food expenses. So that's the only way around, so I have done that. And eventually, I graduated with 3.8 GPA, and I became the very first Asian undocumented student body president at Laney College, student body president. And before I transferred to UC Berkeley. And I'm saying this because, not that, I'm a student body president, but because I can do it too. Just because I'm undocumented, that doesn't mean I can run for student government or serve our community. I really want to prove them wrong, because there's the mainstream media portray undocumented immigrants as criminals, and they take away jobs and things like that. And I really wanted to prove them wrong. And I deserve to be here, and I could contribute back to our society. And that's why I ran for student government, to represent our community and really want to contribute back to our society. And really did well in school. And so fortunately enough, I now that I'm at UC Berkeley, this will be my last year. And as Kent mentioned, I ran for student government again, because I knew that how much impact that I could make as a student government itself. Just even the representation was a huge impact to our community, to undocumented students. And so I ran, and fortunately enough, to be elected as a student senator at UC Berkeley. And at the same time, it's been a very difficult moment, because as Catherine mentioned, the tuition has been increased, and it's going to be increased every year. And it's been very tough. Not only I have to worry about financial situation, academics, but our personal family reasons, but also like just the stress of my status. And it's been very tough, but I've been able to fight back due to support of Kent, a lot of Korean Resource Center, some of the Korean Resource Centers in here, Asian Law Caucus, and other organizations and other supporters around me to support me to accomplish my goals. And I've been continuing to advocate on the DREAM Act and immigrant rights issues. And I've been do a lot of spoken in multiple rallies and met a lot of people. And I remember the first time when I spoke in the Oakland Community Center, where I was quite nervous, but once I shared my testimony, and it was very liberating experience. And after the testimony, a Latina lady came up to me and hugged me, and said thank you. And she said that her daughter is a U.S. citizen, but she is undocumented, and her dad just got deported back to Mexico. And she said that I gave her a courage, and she wanted me to continue to share my testimony, empower not only immigrant community, but also immigrant students, as well as specifically API undocumented students. And 2 months ago, before the school started, as Ken mentioned, I acted in the civil disobedience action with other 6 undocumented students in San Bernardino area. And we wanted to do this because we really wanted to empower other young undocumented youth, and we wanted to fight against the inhumane injustice law like secure community policy. And we chose San Bernardino County because there are organizations like anti-immigrant legislations, KKK, and white supremacists are really hurting our community. And so we really want to stab at the heart of anti-immigrant communities. And it was such an empowering experience. Inside the jail, actually, the first time ever I met the immigration official in person, one-to-one. That would have never happened like 3 years ago. And when I saw them, I was very proud of myself. And I didn't say in a straight face, I'm undocumented, unafraid. But inside of my head, I'm proud of who I am. I'm Jun Hong, and you better respect me. You better respect me who I am. And I wasn't nervous at all. And it was very empowering, and it was a very liberating experience. And obviously we are out. At the same time, our process is still in the process, and it's still ongoing campaign. We have to, stop all young undocumented students halt deportation, and that was our message. And I really risked my life in jeopardy being in deportation because I really wanted to empower undocumented immigrant students throughout the country. Specifically Asian undocumented students. As David mentioned, we need more Asian representation to bring, to break the stereotype and, lift up our voices and, let our voice heard. And that's what is it all about. And this is not about Latino issue, it is a human rights issue, and we have to continue to stand united and work together to stand fight back. And before I closed out, one of the things that I really wanted to share was that although it's a slow process, but we're moving forward. I'm saying that is because when I got out of the jail, I got a lot of support from different communities and different supporters from around the States. And one of the students contacted me from, from New York, private Facebook me after she heard about the action, the civil disobedience action through Korean newspaper and things like that. And she told me that, thank you for saving my life. She said that she was very depressed because her parents couldn't afford to pay for her education and she cannot support herself. And she's already like 23 years old. And she was thinking of committing a suicide. And I felt her pain because I had that same moment after I graduated from high school. And she told me that because of the crisis that we were able to bring, and because of the stories that David, Catherine share in the public, she said that I'm motivated again, and I will continue to stay in this country and work hard, and I will get involved in the DREAM Act movement. And a week later, she messaged me again that, I'm in this one organization that working on the DREAM Act movement. I'm starting to advocating for the DREAM Act, and I'm in the part of the immigrant rights movement. And that's what it's all about, I think. I think that's what got me motivated to continue to speak on behalf of other undocumented youth, to share testimonies and continue to empower other communities to, work together and build a movement. And I think this is what about, and I really appreciate David and Catherine and other undocumented youth to, share a testimony, and not necessarily have to be in the public, but in many different ways, and continue to, work together. And I guess my demand for you all is, since we risk our lives, risk our lives just to share our testimonies here at this stage, I want you to risk your life for us and sacrifice with us to fix our broken immigration system. I think that's what we can do. I think that's the ultimate challenge that I'm going to bring before I leave this testimony. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Just to wrap up, next year marks the 130th anniversary of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Let us be very clear that there is a long history of racist, anti-immigrant policies that have been embraced by the U.S. government to exclude Asians from coming to this country and to marginalize their existence in this country. 130 years later, the fight continues, and we are so honored to have people like David and Catherine and Ju who represent the finest qualities of young leaders in our society, the finest qualities of Asian American youth leadership today. And we know that the future is in very good hands when we see these remarkable young people. One of the most exciting days this year for me was on the closing day of the Dream Summer Retreat, when David and Catherine and Ju were part of 100 immigrant youth in a contingent for the Labor Day March, and they each had this t-shirt that said, "I am undocumented." And they were the loudest and rowdiest contingent in the entire, there were thousands of workers out there, and the Dream Act students and the Dream Summer participants were the loudest and rowdiest there, chanting undocumented and unafraid, jumping on the stage and leading thousands of people in a chant, undocumented and unafraid, education, not deportation. So I wanted to give this t-shirt to Peggy and one to Cindy to thank them for all their support in this struggle. Thank you.
I'm Peggy Syka, and I want to go on record standing with all of the Dreamers. Ju said there isn't much left to say, and I think that's really true. I usually, you all know, I always have a lot to say, but this has just been like Mayor Lee came, and we just thought that he was going to welcome us. And what a great frame, right? As the mayor of San Francisco, or the mayor of any city. So we're really pleased to hear his remarks. And we were going to show a little tape, and I just said to Joe, no, cut that tape. And I said, what else really is there to say except that thank you? And I say this to each one of you, not to do a polite thank you, but to say to you that this is the privilege of AAPIP. Someone like me gets to go to North Carolina and hear Eugene Cho speak. He made me cry, he made me laugh, but he motivated me to think about what it is, what more can we do? I go to a KRC dinner and I meet David. It was bad. I was really a basket case. It was bad. And I just looked at Cindy about 20 minutes ago and I said, it's over. I'm done. It's over, But what it is that how proud can we be to build an organization, to be a part of something that we're called to be active, to do something. Through our chapters, through our giving circles, through all of the organizational fellowship organizations here in California and Minnesota. This was it for us, a test. Thank you for being a part of this test for us. Could we bring everybody? Could we gather? And I'll just confess to you, please give every AAPIP staff person a hug and a thank you. They work with this crazy person every day. that asks crazy things. Why can't we do it? Usually that's what it is. That's the question. And then they say, yeah, let's do it. And so then we get crazy. So this was an extraordinary effort, complex. We can make it better if we do it again. We can make it better. We'll learn from this. Thank you, though, for being where you are across this crazy country of ours. Boston, I want to start. You know, I always say I actually have a map of the U.S. in my mind because it's helped me, as forgetful as I am, to be conscious of how national AAPIP really is. So I start off by saying thank you to Boston chapter. I know you're in the house, Mickey, Akimoto, and others from our chapter. Thank you to the Saffron and the other circle, that's Giving Circle, that's there now. Thank you in New York to our amazing chapter, our board members, our Giving Circle, the really important Giving Circle, the Asian Women Giving Circle, that's there. Thank you in Philly for being able to create a model of activating a community foundation, building a chapter, and building a Giving Circle. Thank you so much to Philly. Thank you to Chicago for being the first Asian Giving Circle, to be really a part of one of the very first chapters for AAPIP in the Midwest. Thank you, Minnesota. Thank you to all of you, the organizations that we've been privileged for the last 3 years, honored to work with through the National Gender and Equity Campaign and the Organizational Fellowship Program. Thank you to the Hmong Women Giving Circle there who really took us on a different journey. Thank you to the folks who built the chapter and continue with that chapter. Thank you, Wisconsin, you're in the house, Freedom Inc. And our newest Hmong Women's Giving Circle. Thank you for your courageous leadership in the context of a very difficult terrain in Wisconsin. Thank you for not only just being in the house with us this weekend, but for doing your work every day. We really we're privileged, we're so privileged to be really working together with you. Thank you in Seattle. We have board members. Yes, Jackie had to leave, but Ellis Ito's here. And Ellis said to me the other night, Peggy, you know, I was reading the board book on the plane, and I thought it was, a retreat. It's a convention. But you know, we've got a lot of work going on also in Seattle, and many, many great members there. Thank you, San Francisco. Thank you for being our strongest base in terms, and historically, the founding spot for AAPIP. Thank you for all the giving circles that are here now. Lunar, Muslim, Devada, you're national, but you got a lot of peeps here, so we got to love you here. Thank you for being Daniel Lee, who nominated us to be, nominated us to be acknowledged at the National Philanthropy Day here in November. Thank you very much. A great leader here, and an amazing leader for AAPIP. Thank you, Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley for being our newest chapter. Yay, number 10. Leanne Wong is from Packard and is a member of our board. They're talking about many things in that region. We're very, very lucky. And I think when I said San Francisco, I didn't acknowledge CAA and CPA, who are part of our OFP and really working hard in the National Gender and Equity Campaign. Thank you so much. In LA, Ryan, yay! In the LA area, SAN and KGA, Kiwa and KRC, thank you for being a part of the Organizational Fellowship Program. Thank you for the 2 giving circles that we have now. And next year we'll be there, the Council on Foundations Conference. Yay, LA 2012. I'm sorry, that's right. DC, Cherry Blossom Festival. Thank you, Ben de Guzman. Not just DC for the chapter, yay. That's really wonderful. Cherry Blossom Giving Circle, that's amazing. The White House Initiative on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Karen Ahuja, Executive Director in the House. Doing incredible work on public-private partnerships, and AAPIP's honored to be in that partnership. I think that it's really an important time to also, I'm looking at Eugene Calvert, because we need to say there are huge swaths of this country where we have very few Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders in philanthropy still. It is not because we only worry about more of us for more of us, but there are parts of this country who need our leadership and our representation and our participation. Houston is one of those places. We don't have a chapter until conditions change there, but there is a giving circle. And I thank you, Eugene Calvert, for being the key organizer. I think most of all, I want to say once again to our dreamers, I regret that you have to tell your story. To watch you cry is really, it's really, I can barely stay, I'm like done. I better not talk about it anymore. I'm really like, oh God, it's really bad. But what I know, we know to be true. It's in the hardest places of our lives and our life stories that's what empowers us and makes it real for us. Your activism is protecting our democracy. Your activism continues to remind us that that's how we build and protect our democracy. And philanthropy needs to invest in that. That's what we're investing in. Not just because we're Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders or Muslim. Anyway, it's not our identity that brings us. It's our never giving up. It's our sense of what we bring. It's our legacy. It's our personal stories. It's our personal stories. Eugene is such a master at that. Could you believe his stories? I mean, it's like he takes you, he's so funny too. I just said, that's what in North Carolina, I was like crying, I was like laughing, I was like, oh my God, anyway. And he always takes you to church. And so, so that's what today's kind of been like, I think, well, tomorrow I'm going to be with the giving circles all day. I don't need to go to church, This is really a part of it. And so, once again, we were going to show this little clip. And I think you all know that for AAPIP, to bring it back home to really who we are in this room and outside. We've talked about, 2 campaigns. Those campaigns really, the Giving Circle campaign, it's about bringing and building the best of who we are, looking at our assets. The dreamers, are they not our assets? Are they not our future? So I thank the California Dream Circle because they are called that. They're called. Thank you, J. Lee Wong, for being the main organizer of that, who really is supporting the scholarship efforts. And I say this all and share this all because it's not just about thanking each other and AAPIP thanking you, but it's really us being able to acknowledge each other, embrace each other. In large and small ways, we're making a contribution. And we want this country, our country, to never forget it, that we are leading and we are making a contribution. This is our country. This really is our country. So I want to just end by saying that there's more to come, of course. We put a lot into the substance of what we were trying to bring together, and we spent a lot of time on that. We get kind of neurotic about really picking each word, right, Joey? in what we're trying to put together. And there are things that others have written that are much more powerful than what we could say or write. And so I just want to read what's in the inside cover of your program, because we find it greatly inspirational that there are foundations in the country who write and think and act like this. Kent's on the board of the New World Foundation. This was one of their reports. And it's one page that they had. This is an excerpt. Things can change dramatically in a lifetime. Rivers die, levees fail, markets collapse, wars consume, empires fall. Recognizing that so much about the future lies beyond our immediate anticipation and action does not, however, negate the work we have to do right now. If anything, the uncertainty ahead should accelerate our actions. Accelerate our actions. Whether we face a period of crisis, of more gradual change, we need to construct a new vision of America, a vision that measures our well-being by the health of our communities instead of the wealth we each consume, a vision that honors our democratic dreams and not a superpower fantasy. Whatever the pace of change, our greatest strength in setting a democratic course will be the depth of our civic culture and its capacity to engage these issues on the front lines. The ways we are organized in everyday life to tackle our collective problems, the ways we are empowered to make a difference when it counts, the ways we exercise our rights as equal citizens, undocumented or not. I just added that. Because we don't care, right? And human beings, the ways that we resist injustice and manipulation, the ways we protect the next generations. And I have to add, we have a lot of new AAPIP babies, so I care about that. These will be the test of any time to come. And New World wrote that. That was 2005, after the elections of 2004. These words are really timeless. They're the real challenge for us. They're the challenge for AAPIP, to try to keep being the boldest we can, to push where we can, to maintain our credibility, to keep it real, to be grounded, to be inspirational, to be powerful and strong and influential and grounded in our values of equality and justice. That's what it's all about. How privileged we are. We say this every day as staff, how privileged we are to work for this organization. I'm so proud to have been a part of it for almost 10 years in January. Wow. Anyway. And I thank and I honor each one of you. Thank you for being with us this weekend. We've got more work now, but lunch, always have a lot of food in the house. Thanks for this small, but we said, cozy venue. We love this. And I just look forward to the rest of today. We're going to party tonight and have more meetings tomorrow. It's really, we're hoping that it's fun and substantive and powerful.
Could I ask the plenary speakers to all stand and face our audience here? And will you all join me in applauding our wonderful speakers today? I want you guys to feel the love that you have in the room today. Thank you so much.